I should have known something was wrong the moment her skin began to glow, not softly, like it usually did, but in sharp, trembling pulses that made the shadows bend toward her. She stood frozen in the doorway, eyes blazing like twin suns, whispering my name as if afraid the walls were listening. And then, with a voice that trembled between fear and something far more dangerous, she told me the one thing no human should ever hear from an Aurelian roommate. Something that would drag me into a world of rituals, instincts, and choices I never knew existed. But that was before the council intervened, before they looked at me and made their impossible announcement. I never thought moving off-planet would turn me into the kind of man who had to explain to his landlord why his roommate glowed through the walls at night. But that was before I ever met Lirina. Before I ever saw a woman whose skin shimmered like starlight caught under the surface of a lake, before she asked to touch my wings, and before the Alien Council sent me a message at 2:13 a.m. that said, in their calmly formal legalese, "Human Ethan Ward, the Council acknowledges your cohabitant Lirina Satel as your chosen mate. Please prepare for the binding review within 3 local cycles." But I'm getting ahead of myself, because the day this mess started was not a normal day on Andara Prime. It was the day my alien roommate decided completely innocently. She claimed to sit on me, literally, when I first moved into Habitation Block 9. Unit Q17, I expected a quiet existence. I'd work my engineering job, try not to blow myself up with a plasma wrench, and occasionally remember to feed my landlord's carnivorous houseplants. Instead, I opened the door on move-in day to find a woman standing on the kitchen counter. A glowing woman, with teal luminescent markings curling down her arms like constellations, long silver hair tied into a loose braid, and bright gold eyes fixed on the ceiling panel. She was rewiring with her bare hands. She looked down at me like I was the one in the wrong apartment. "You are Ethan Ward?" she asked, voice smooth and low. "You Aish? Good." I claimed the warm shower and the window bed, and the refrigeration unit makes a chirping noise. I dislike it. With that, she hopped off the counter, landing silently, and walked past me without another word. I followed her with all the dignity of a man dragged into a hurricane. "You're my roommate?" "Yes, you're." Glowing, yes again. No elaboration. No introduction. No explanation, just yes. She later told me her name was Lirina Satel, and that her species, the Aurelian, had heightened senses, strong bone density, and something called resonance organs, which let them perceive emotional wavelengths. She said this so casually that I choked on my coffee the first time she mentioned it. "You can perceive emotions?" "Mine? Only when you project too loudly," she said. I project? You emote like a malfunctioning warp engine. That's rude." It is factual. Living with her was like sharing a space with a glowing cat, crossed with a brutally honest diplomat. She organized everything, labeled everything, fixed everything, and also had no concept of personal space. For example, she once sat next to me on the couch to watch a documentary. Except her definition of next to apparently meant pressed shoulder to shoulder, thigh to thigh, and partially on top of. "Are all humans this warm?" she asked. "No. I mean, yes. I mean, why are we touching this much?" "It is normal," she said. "Where?" "My world." "Well, this isn't your..." But she'd already fallen asleep on my shoulder. I thought that was the most complicated she could make my life. Reader, I was wrong. 3 weeks into our roommate arrangement, I came home to find the apartment dark, except for a faint glow pulsing from the living room. I stepped inside slowly. "Lirana?" No answer. The glow grew brighter, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Okay, I muttered. No need to panic. Maybe this is normal. Maybe she's doing yoga. Or charging. Or, she is behind you, said a third voice. I screamed. A light flashed. Lirina burst into laughter, fully visible now, and holding some kind of alien holographic prank device. Your reaction is substandard, she said, wiping her eyes. Humans are supposed to fall backwards or flail their limbs. You nearly gave me an early application to the afterlife. She blinked. Is this a joke? Yes. I do not understand it. That was typical. Aurelian humor and human humor were rarely compatible. But the important part was that the prank was overgot, or so I thought, because when she stepped closer to check that I was not experiencing cardiac distress, she accidentally brushed my shoulder, and the moment her skin touched mine, her whole body lit up, starting from her fingertips. A radiant pulse spread across her arms, then her chest, then her throat. The markings along her skin flared bright enough to cast shadows against the wall. Her pupils widened. A soft hum rose from her chest, so gentle I felt it more than heard it. Oh no, she whispered. Lirina, are you okay? This is not good, she muttered, backing up a step. You triggered a response. What kind of response? A biological one. A mating reflex. I choked. Mating? I literally just touched your shoulder. Yes, that is sufficient if resonance levels are already heightened. Heightened by what? The prank, she said flatly. I startled myself when you screamed. You startled yourself? I miscalculated the fear radius. I looked at her, glowing, humming, trembling slightly. She looked at me like I was a dangerous source of heat. Ethan, she said slowly, I need you to remain calm. That's going to be hard. Do not come closer. I'm not moving. Good, because if you touch me again right now. She swallowed, markings flaring hotter. I may not maintain control. My heart dropped into my stomach like a lead weight. What does that mean exactly? Her voice softened, almost pleading. It means my body will assume you are my chosen mate. Cliffhanger incoming. And then the front door hissed open. The door swung wide, and in walked Myra. Of course it was Myra with the tote bag that said, Trust me, I'm a midwife, even though she worked in municipal planning. Myra with the hair that never cooperated, and the eyes that always found pain and tried to fix it. Mira, who was loud in the best possible way, and had a knack for choosing the worst moments to barge into someone's life and improve it. She froze for half a beat, blinking like she'd stepped off a tram and into a different atmosphere. Ethan? She said slowly. Why is your living room lit like a nightclub for glowworms? Lirina's response was immediate and animal. Her shoulders squared. The soft hum in her chest rose an octave, and her markings flared, tracing the outline of her collarbone in a radiance that made the shadows shiver. She stepped instinctively closer to me. Human friend identified, she said, voice low and clipped. Myra didn't notice the subtleties, at least not yet. Hey, you finally answered your cum. I left like 3 messages. You okay? The city. She stopped because she was looking at us. Specifically at how Lirina's hand hovered just a fraction behind my back, as if she were counting heartbeats, as if she'd memorized my silhouette. Her brow crinkled. Oh. Myra's toes tapped the floor. Is this a date? Am I interrupting a date? No, I blurted. It's nothing. Lirina, glowing, didn't help. It is not a date. It is a stabilization protocol. Stabilization? What now? Myra squinted at her. You're an alien? Lirina shrugged one luminous shoulder. I am an Aurelian. And you are? Loud, Myra laughed. Okay, new roommates, got it. Do you have snacks? No. Lirina's tone sliced the air. You are misinterpreting proximity. Myra blinked, then laughed again, more uncertain this time. Ethan, are you okay? Your pup, she gestured to the corner where my antique speaker sat, is blaring at the wrong frequency. And why is she gestured vaguely at Lirina's glow, looking like she could power a small star. I tried to find words that weren't mortifying. She's having a biological reaction. A mating reflex. Myra's face shifted from amused to alarm to something that might have been curiosity. Oh my God, are you joking? Lirina's hum deepened. It is true. Asterisk Myra looked at me like I'd stolen a planet and put it in my pocket. Ethan, did you have you wait? What did you do? Did you flirt? Did you say something clever? Did you? No. I said, and it came out way too loud. I touched her shoulder, and she resonates, Lirina finished. I must maintain contact at a specific threshold to avoid deleterious escalation. Myra's eyebrows met in the middle of her forehead. You mean like a hug? Yes, Lirina said, and a shade of something embarrassment. Resolve flashed across her features. Physical contact. Close, sustained contact. My brain tried to bargain. Hug? Fine. Hug as in polite human hug. 2 seconds. Step back. Hug that doesn't glow like a bus headlight. Okay, I said. We can do that. Hug. Quick, short, stabilizing. Not weird. Myra's mouth twitched. Not weird? You and an Aurelian, Ethan. I have to document this. Not if you stand by the door and narrate quietly into your tote. I muttered. She stuck her tongue out at me. Then did the sensible thing? She moved closer. Because she was exactly the kind of person who would help a very glowing person in distress. Right. Stabilize. I can be a witness. I'll take notes. Lirina's posture softened fractionally, just enough for me to see the almost childlike relief behind her composure. I swallowed a laugh and an awkward pulse in my chest. Ethan, she said quietly, hold me. My throat constricted. Hold her. Not a hug. Not a handshake. Hold. The word felt intimate and old at the same time, as if it belonged in stories I'd read as a kid and forgotten until now. I have to. Yes, for 37 breaths. 37? I said. That's specific. It equals. She tapped the side of her neck with 2 fingers. 37 of my breaths calibrates resonance dampeners. It will not let the reflex reach equilibrium. And if we don't? Her eyes darkened in a way that made the hum in her chest spike. There is risk of involuntary bond initiation. Bond initiation. The words had a bureaucratic ring to them, and the heat of a warning label. I'd never wanted to be the cause of a ritual in an alien culture before. Okay, I said. 37 breaths. We can do 37 breaths. Mira, bless her, straightened and took up the role of reluctant deficient. I'm counting, she announced, clearly pleased. And I need a data point. If this turns into a full-blown cultural ceremony, I want cake. Lirina's lips twitched, the only hint of a smile. Cake is unnecessary on Aurelian formalities, but acceptable for humans who seek solace in sugar. Then it settled. Myra pointed at Lirina. You, down. Ethan, on her right. Close, but not in a way that screams sensual ritual. I approached like a man diffusing a bomb. Steady, hands open, palms visible, 1 foot forward. Lirina's chest rose in quick, shallow pulls. Her glow wavered between hot and molten. When I wrapped my arms around her, it was to steady just to make sure she didn't topple, and to keep the world from pivoting under her feet. Her skin was warm in a way that made me think of late summer sidewalks. The luminescent markings along her arm traced gentle patterns beneath my palm. She exhaled into my shoulder, and the sound was a low, vibrating hum that thrummed against my clavicle. Everything in me, every sarcastic, guarded, mildly cynical neuron, suddenly wanted to keep her there. 37, Mara said. Voice a steady beam. I inhaled, felt Lirina's ribs press against mine, felt the faint quiver of resonance under her throat. The house smelled like ozone and lavender, and something soft and oceanic. A scent that made the part of my brain that kept notes about feelings very jealous. Don't hum at me, I whispered. Because apparently, I was dramatically protective now. Your voice is irregular, Lirina replied calmly. You are amused and anxious simultaneously. Yeah, I'm a walking paradox. She pressed a little closer. The glow around her collarbone flared, an arrow of light pointing at my neck. If this had been a less complicated evening, I might have remarked on the way her breath tickled the soft hair at the back of my neck. Instead, I focused on counting in sync with her 1, 2, 3, matching the rise and fall of her chest until Myra reached 17 and the humming stilled. Dangerously at 28, her fingers tightened around the fabric of my shirt. Gentle, but sure, like someone anchoring themselves to a cliff ledge. My pulse knocked against my ribs like an over-caffeinated drummer. I tried to keep my face neutral. Failed. Breathe, Lirina murmured into my shoulder. And there was something small and human in the way she spoke that snagged me. Myra's voice broke the small bubble of intimacy. Okay, 30-30-1-30-2. Ethan, you're twitching. Twitching? I hissed. I'm not twitching. You sure have a human twitch, she said accusingly. Also, is there a pheromone release? Because I think the wallpaper just sighed. Very funny, Lirina said. Humans are humorous when nervous. Myra's face softened into genuine concern. Ethan, if this is too much, it's not too much. The words came out steadier than I felt. Holding Lirina was so much more than physical. It was like holding a living constellation whose light answered me back. It was astonishing and scandalous in a way that made my mouth dry. 30-6. I felt Lirina's heartbeat thud in a staccato against my palm. Her glow dimmed almost imperceptibly. In that single breath, the hum that had been a background singer in the room quieted to a whisper. 30-7. Mira exhaled like someone who'd been waiting for a bus for an hour and finally got on. And stop. She clapped once, delighted. Lirina's grip loosened with practiced control. She stepped back, a little dazed, like a person who just swum up from deep water. It worked, she said, voice thin with relief. Resonance dampeners stabilized. There is little risk of bond initiation for the next 24 cycles. I braced for the world to right itself, for things to be normal again. But normal in my life had apparently resettled to a slightly different setting. Myra didn't know what to say at first. Then she beamed at me as if I'd just unlocked a new level in life. Ethan, that was wow. You hugged an actual alien and didn't combust. You're officially more evolved than me. Lirina, for her part, looked at me with an almost scientific detachment that I suspected was papering over something raw. You have the capacity to play the role of a mate in an emergency, she said. This may qualify for certain domestic heuristics. I blinked. Domest what? Mates perform nightly warmth exchanges to regulate sleep cycles, she recited. Humans do something similar, I assume, though yours involves blankets and caffeinated beverages. Myra snorted. Caffeinated beverages are essential components of Earthmate rituals. You may be teasing, Lirina said. Deadpan. Teasing is my primary function. Mira replied with a grimace that was actually a smile. The moment broke into laughter mine. Hers, Myra's a bubbling, ridiculous relief that made the air taste like soap. For a second, It felt like we were back to being normal roommates, awkward, entangled by oddities and laughter. Then Lyrina's command pinned on her wrist in a crisp, tonal chirp that froze the room in a single new shape. The glow along her throat tightened, then dropped at the base of her skull, as if someone had unplugged the lights. Her face went unreadable in that high, foreign way she used when she processed a new protocol. "It is the council," she said, voice thin. "They are sending a delegate." Myra's eyebrows climbed into her hairline. "The Alien Council? You mean the bureaucratic belly of Aurelian etiquette? They have what, an office?" "The council adjudicates interspecies bonds," Lyrina said. "Their recognition is required if a bond persists past the dampening period." My head swam with words that made storybook myths sound quaint. Bond, recognition, the council. My coffee went cold in the cup I'd forgotten to finish. Myra's hand landed on my shoulder like a grounding weight. "Ethan, are you getting this? Your roommate's species has paperwork." "This is horrible," I whispered, and didn't entirely mean it. "It could be worse," Lyrina said. "They are seldom worse. They are thorough." "Thorough is optimistic," Myra said. "They're gonna want tea in a form, and probably a stamp." She was joking, but a part of me smaller, secret, delightfully panicked imagined a room full of alien officials in robes, tiny pens poised over scrolls, whispering about whether I'd been a suitable mate by geological standards. I found the mental image simultaneously mortifying and absurdly romantic. Lyrina's amber eyes fixed on me, and there was a tilt to her head that made me very aware of the way light pooled in the hollows of her throat. "Council recognition does not always require completion ritual," she said. "But if the reflex returns before they adjudicate, if it escalates, the outcome is decisive." "Decisive how?" I asked, because apparently I had volunteered for a government hearing in an interstellar romance drama and now demanded to know the statutes. She hesitated. "Completion may be necessary." The universe rearranged itself around that single loaded word. Completion. My mouth went dry again. It felt less like a bureaucratic term, and more like the final chord in a symphony I'd been humming to without knowing the tune. Mira, bless her gift for ignoring protocol when it wasn't to her advantage, squealed like a child who'd found a secret. "Ethan Ward," she announced theatrically. "You are now in the running for cosmic husbandry." "I need a selfie." "No," I said, aghast. "Yes," she said, already pulling out her comb, and before I could object, she snapped one. The photo would patrol her social feed for weeks. Lyrina looked faintly annoyed. "Why is she documenting my physiology?" "Because," Mira said, honest as a knife. "This is the most interesting thing to happen to our apartment since you brought home that plant that eats single socks." I found I agreed with her entirely. And then, while Mira fussed and took more notes, and I tried to explain our situation without making it sound like a melodramatic soap opera, the apartment door chimed with that sterile, official tone that meant something in the bureaucracy of living spaces. An incoming transmission. A formal, stacked voice said, crisp and careful, "Citizen Lyrina Satel. This is Delegate Vesh of the Aurelian Council. Please present at the Council atrium for initial recognition. Be advised, the Council requests the presence of both said human and said Aurelian for voluntary review." Silence pressed in like a soft blanket. I looked at Lyrina, at the way her shoulders bunched and her fingers flexed. The glow across her chest thinned to a point. The hum that had dimmed rose again, not angry this time, but expectant like an audience waiting for the orchestra to resume. Myra, never one to miss a beat, lowered her comb and looked at us with a grin that was equal parts sympathy and malice. "Well," she said, "congratulations, you two. You're either going to get married or slapped with a lot of forms. Either way, free cake?" Liana's expression softened into something almost sweet. "There may be cake," she said, "and I will require an escort." My throat tight with a cocktail of nerves and something more tender. "Escort?" I echoed, and the word lodged in my chest like a warm stone. She smiled small. Private, and the apartment, somehow, held its breath? Cliffhanger? Yes, but also somehow electric with possibility. I realized as Mira buzzed the confirmation back to the council, and Liana's glow settled into a soft, comfortable luminescence that nothing about that night was ordinary anymore. We had crossed a threshold. The council would decide details. Paperwork would be filed. Protocol would be observed. But tonight, we had been pressed into each other's arms. Tonight I had felt her hum against my skin. Tonight a bureaucratic voice had announced us to the universe. And the universe, for reasons I could not yet explain, had never looked more inviting. There are many things you expect to experience in life. A terrible haircut. Taxes, maybe an existential crisis or three. Being summoned politely, but firmly, by an interstellar governing body, because your roommate accidentally began mating with you, is not one of them. The council atrium was enormous. I'd seen pictures before. The towering crystalline pillars. The hovering rings of light that rotated like translucent moons. The metallic floor, etched with fractal patterns that pulsed when you stepped on them. But pictures didn't prepare me for the feeling, the way the air hummed with a kind of silent expectation. As if the entire structure breathed. Liana walked slightly ahead of me, all confidence and glowing composure. Her luminescence had settled to a soft golden shimmer along her neck and shoulders, not the frantic, pulsing radiance of earlier, but something quieter, peaceful. Well, mostly peaceful. Every time she glanced at me, the markings at her jaw brightened just a little, like embers remembering how to burn. I tried not to notice. I failed. We approached a large platform that hovered above the chamber floor. A dozen Aurelians stood in a semicircle behind it, robes flowing like animated silk, their markings glowing and synchronized. Waves that probably meant something official, like greeting or judgment or please don't knock over our expensive. Architecture. One stepped forward. Delegate. VESH. Tall. Regal. Markings bright and perfectly symmetrical. He peered at me like I was an unusually shaped sculpture. "Human Ethan Ward," he said, voice soft but resonant. "You stand here today for preliminary evaluation regarding accidental resonance initiation with citizen Liana Settel." Accidental, I squinted. "I mean, yes? That's accurate. Putting accidental at the beginning really helps." Liana shot me a warning look. I shut up. Delegate Vesh continued. "We require confirmation. Have you engaged in any intentional mating gestures, invitations, or initiations?" The entire semicircle of glowing aliens leaned forward slightly. My soul left my body. No. I sputtered. "I mean no. Absolutely not. I didn't engage anything. I didn't initiate anything. Unless screaming at a prank counts." There was a soft ripple of bioluminescent laughter among the council. Liana stepped beside me, chin lifting defiantly. The reflex was triggered by my miscalculation, she said, voice proud and sharp. "Ethan Ward is not at fault." "I appreciate that," I whispered. "But," she added without hesitation, "he handled the situation with remarkable composure." "I appreciate that more," I whispered again. Quieter this time. Vesh nodded thoughtfully. "And the stabilization protocol? You engaged willingly, human Ethan?" Willingly. Not the word I wanted questioned in front of 12 glowing judges. But here we were. "Yes, I helped," I said. "She needed physical contact. And I did that?" A soft hum passed through the semicircle. I couldn't tell if that was approval or a red flag. "Very well," Vesh said. Initial review indicates potential compatibility. Compatibility? I repeated weakly. Lirana's jaw tightened the tiniest fraction. It is not binding yet, she murmured. We have until the completion window to avoid escalation. Completion window. The phrase hung in the air like a neon sign. However, Vesh continued, there is still the matter of the secondary reflex. I blinked. Secondary reflex? Lirana went still. Ethan, she said slowly, do not panic. I panicked. Delegate Vesh gestured toward a crystalline construct to our right, a structure filled with rotating glyphs. They rearranged rapidly until one glowing sigil glowed bright. Your resonance touched hers twice, Vesh said. Once at initiation, once at stabilization. If a third resonance occurs within one cycle, he waited a moment, the bond will solidify. Solidify? I swear my voice cracked. Like epoxy? Or marriage? Equivalent, Vesh said, perfectly serious. Equivalent to marriage. I choked on air. Wait, you're telling me if I accidentally bump into her again, we're mated, Vesh finished calmly. Yes, Lirana flinched. So slight most people wouldn't have noticed, but I saw it, because I had held her. Because I knew the way her glow brightened when she was nervous. I looked at her, and she looked away. The council murmured, preparing for the ritualistic closing statements. But I leaned closer to her, close enough. The light from her markings brushed my cheek with warmth. Lirana, I whispered. Why didn't you tell me earlier? She swallowed. Because her voice trembled. I did not want to influence your choices. The comment hit me in the sternum harder than I expected. Choices. As if she thought I'd recoil. As if she thought she was a burden. Before I could respond, Delegate Vesh lifted his hand. The council recesses. You have one cycle to prevent the third resonance. Or accept it. The crystalline floor flickered. The lights dimmed, and suddenly Lirana and I were standing alone in a chamber carved from starlight and expectation. We walked out of the atrium in silence. Not angry silence. Not awkward silence. A heavy, nervous silence, like two people walking side by side toward the edge of something enormous. The air outside the council building was crisp. 2 moons hung low above the horizon, making her glow stand out like living fire. I forced a laugh. So? Mild day, huh? Ethan, she said softly, this is serious. I know, I replied, shoving my hands in my pockets. I was just trying to keep us from spiraling. Lirana exhaled slowly. You should keep your distance, she said finally. Until the cycle ends. That hit harder than it should have. Distance meant safety. Distance meant no accidental touches. Distance meant no third resonance. Distance meant not holding her again. I swallowed. Right, distance, sure. We started walking back toward the transit stop. Lirana paced carefully away from me. 3 full strides to the left. I caught her glancing at me every few seconds, as if she wasn't ready to trust her instincts. I wasn't sure I trusted mine either. At one point, her hand brushed her braid, and her fingers shook ever so slightly. Lirana, I said gently, you okay? She hesitated. My resonance is still irregular. Because of the council thing? Because of you. I froze. She realized what she said at the same moment I did. She turned her head sharply, markings flaring bright. That is not what I intended to. I mean, your presence alters my... you're flustered, I said. Stunned. I am not flustered, she insisted. Glowing brighter. I think you are. Her glow intensified like sunrise. I am simply adjusting my systems to unexpected variables. That's Aurelian for flustered. She made a noise I'd never heard from her, a frustrated, embarrassed hum that vibrated the air. I laughed. Softly. Then the glow around her chest pulsed once. Twice, deep and warm. Not a full resonance, but a warning. She stiffened. We cannot stay near each other. Right, sorry, space. She stepped back fast. I did too. Except dash behind me. Someone was rushing toward us. Ethan. The voice hit me before I even saw her. Mira. Again. She jogged toward us, waving her comb over her head. I found out where you were. I came to make sure you weren't. She skidded to a stop between us, panting lightly. Dead, she finished. Or married. Or arrested. Or all of the above. Lirina stepped forward so fast, I barely registered the movement. She didn't grab Myra. She didn't shove her. But she positioned herself between Myra and me with such sudden, protective precision that Myra shrieked and almost dropped her comb. Whoa! Mira yelped. Back up, glow stick. Lirana's glow surged in a way that reminded me of the moment before a thunderstorm cracks open. You approached him too quickly. Lirana hissed. Because I ran. Myra shot back. Humans do that sometimes. It's called exercise. You startled his resonance field. I startled what? I lunged forward. Everyone please stop startling everyone. Lirana didn't move. Her stance was pure instinct, shoulders squared, feet planted, markings flaring in defensive spirals. She looked less like a scientist and more like an ancient guardian statue about to come to life. Mira slowly raised her hands. Ethan, she whispered, why is your roommate glowing like she's about to eat me? She's not going to eat you, I said. Then, quieter. I think she might be jealous. Lirina spun toward me, scandalized. I am not jealous. You're glowing very jealously, Myra said. I am glowing because my species glows when we... She stopped. When you what? Myra pressed. Lirina looked away sharply. It is irrelevant. I stepped closer, careful, cautious, testing the air like stepping on thin ice. Lirina, I said softly, you don't need to defend me. She looked back at me. Her markings flickered. I do, she said. It is instinct. The way she said it, quiet, fierce, almost unbearably sincere, made my chest tighten. Mira looked between us, eyes narrowing. Oh my God, she muttered. You two are absolutely mated. We are not, Lirina and I said simultaneously. Mira raised her hands again. Okay. But maybe don't stand that close or else. Too late. Lirina had stepped toward me. Instinctively, protectively, her shoulder brushed mine. Barely, but enough. The glow that shot across her skin was instantaneous. The hum in her chest deepened. Her pupils dilated. She froze. I froze. Myra's jaw dropped open. Oh, Myra whispered. Oh no, that counted, didn't it? Lirona's voice broke. Yes, my heart thundered. That was the third resonance, she whispered. Her glow flared to full brilliance, pure golden white, swirling across her skin in a pattern so breathtaking my lungs forgot what air was. Her breath hitched. Her knees buckled, and I barely caught her before she could fall. She trembled against me, humming softly through clenched teeth. Ethan, she gasped. I cannot stop it. Myra stumbled back. What do we do? Lirana's eyes glowed brighter than her markings. We need the ritual. The completion. I cannot stabilize without. Her glow surged. She leaned into me like her body was magnetized to mine. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. Ethan, I need contact, or the bond will overwhelm me. My mouth went dry. Myra clapped a hand over her own mouth. Oh my God, kiss her. Lirana's eyes widened, but she didn't step back. She leaned closer. So close our breath mixed. So close, I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. So, I whispered, pulse hammering. The ritual requires a kiss, she breathed, voice shaking. Yes. Her markings pulsed, slow and pleading, like a heartbeat she held out to me. Mayra squealed in delighted horror. Do it, before she fries the pavement. Liana shuddered in my arms. Ethan, she whispered. Please. And as the glow brightened, as her hum vibrated into my chest, as her eyes locked onto mine with desperate, molten warmth, I leaned in. Closer, and the world narrowed to the space between her face and mine. Her skin warm as summer stone, luminous as a city at night, seemed to strip aside everything else. The chamber around us blurred into watercolor light. Myra's excited squeal faded into background static. The council's crystals and their unreadable sigils flattened into muted wallpaper. All my attention pooled into the single, precise gravity of Liana's eyes. She smelled like ozone and rain. Her low hum thrummed under my palm like a hidden instrument. When she leaned in, it felt like the last barrier between us had dissolved, like two different notes finally resolving into the same chord. She paused. Her breath feathered against my cheek. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling. On my world, the completion is not initiated lightly. It is an intimate ceremonial resolution. If you consent, if you participate willingly, then this will be our choice. Consent. The word landed like a gentle command. I realized how much I wanted this to be a decision made together, not thrust upon us by biology or bureaucracy. My answer arranged itself before I had to think. Yes, I said. The single word was small, and certain. She exhaled as if the moon had released. Her markings softened into a tender glow. She closed the rest of the distance. Our lips met. It was a kiss that was fewer fireworks and more tide slow, inevitable, tidal. It began with the tentative contact of two people testing the temperature of each other's waters and swiftly built into a steady, warming pull that felt like a homecoming. Neither of us had known we'd needed. Her mouth was a strange and wonderful thing, cool at the edges, warm at the center, with the faint metallic tang of mineral water. Under her hum, I felt a reverberation that seemed to sync with the beating of my own heart. Around us, lights in the atrium shifted softly, like an audience leaning in. When we broke the kiss, it was to breathe in the same small space, foreheads resting together. You are different than I imagined, she murmured. A wry smile teased her features. You smell like coffee and oxygen and the thing you call aftershave. You smell like the ocean, I said, which was probably the most poetic line I'd ever managed. And like home. She laughed softly, the sound a ripple through both our chests. The hum that had been a tremor settled into a slow, contented purr. Delegate Vesh cleared his throat. We both froze. Council recognizes the voluntary initiation, he said, voice smoother somehow for the weight of the sentence. Because the completion was entered with mutual consent, the bond shall be registered as conditional pairing pending full formalities. Conditional pairing. The phrase felt like a comfortable sweater and a set of handcuffs, at once cozy and binding. Myra whooped halfway down the concourse, the human equivalent of both a fanfare and a clap. She had started recording again, her cum held aloft like a flag of victory and evidence. Liana's glow softened into something private and warm. She nudged me with her shoulder, and I found I wanted to keep touching her like it was a new habit. I'd been delighted to pick up as we walked out of the atrium this time. The night air tasted astonishingly fresh. 2 moons rode the signature sky. City lights spangled the horizon. Liana's hand found mine in a movement so natural, my fingers closed without thinking. Ethan, she said, voice low. Thank you. For not running screaming into the night? For not fleeing when the council spoke. Her fingers flexed around mine, gentle and sure. For choosing willingly. Okay, I said, because I was not made for grand speeches at interstellar councils. I chose. She squeezed. You will need to learn the rituals for Phase 1. No sudden temperature changes at midnight. synchronized breathing twice daily, and the exchange of small tokens on the 7th day. Tokens? I said, picturing trinkets, maybe a lawn flamingo dressed in Aurelian garb. They could be seeds, she said thoughtfully. Or poems. Poems, I echoed. I can do poems. Maybe not good ones, but earnest. You have the option of an earnest poem, she said with a small, delighted sound. That will suffice. Mira, who had been trailing us with the blunt curiosity of a terrier, burst into our orbit. Okay, report. How was it? Were there fireworks? Was there paperwork? Did you sign anything? Do you get a badge? Can I touch your wings? I shot her a look. My wings? I said, glancing down at the faint, iridescent slits along my scapulovestigial now, the remnant of a genetic quirk I'd kept hidden, because who wants roommates asking to touch your wings? And I felt unbearably exposed. Lirana's fingers brushed them with casual possessiveness, and the skin beneath my shirt prickled. You have wings? Mira demanded. Not the functional kind, I said. More decorative. She stuck her head between us. Please do not start with decorative. This is my favorite new development. Lirana pulled away, amused and a little sharp. Myra, physical examination without consent is not advisable. Consent is boring, Myra said, undeterred. Curiosity is everything. You are a chaos enzyme, I muttered. Myra made an offended face. I'll take that as a compliment. We walked back to the apartment in a dazed, delighted cluster. People glanced as we passed the glow around Lirina, a gentle halo, my hand warm against hers. For the first time since she'd moved in, I felt like the person at the center of a new universe, one that included light, bureaucratic forms, and a woman who hummed when she was happy. The next morning life resumed with the bizarre normalcy of a sitcom episode slotted between two tearjerker dramas. Lirina woke at dawn, her luminescent soft like early sunlight, and started making breakfast as though this was a perfectly ordinary part of being conditionally paired. She prepared things in a way that suggested ritual while remaining practical. She boiled water to a precise degree, toasted something that might be considered bread in 3 separate languages, and arranged the dishes with geometric symmetry. You prepare food perfectly, I said, watching her move. It is part of my domestic heuristics, she said. Also, the council recommended that the bonded partake in synchronized meals. We can do synchronized breakfasts, I said, trying not to sound too excited. I'll make the coffee. She inclined her head. Coffee is a stimulant. On my world, we prefer rekindling blends. But I shall partake. She sat across from me, hands folded, the kitchen light catching on the luminous bands along her arms. When she reached across the table, our fingers brushed, and a small involuntary flare of light pulsed across her skin. I smiled, helpless. At work, colleagues contacted me with the gentle curiosity of colleagues who'd seen an out-of-place headline. Ethan, congrats, texted Juno, my supervisor, followed quickly by, do Aurelians require relocation subsidies? I typed replies with the calm of a man whose life had been written by someone with a taste for whimsical chaos. That evening, the council sent a formal packet of instructions and regulations. One of them included a list of approved tokens for Phase 1 bonding. The list was both oddly specific and oddly adorable. A small vial of rainwater from your birthplace, a folded paper with your earliest memory, a knitted item, or an edible confection dear to your culture. I stared at the list and then at the small, anonymous envelope Lirana slid across the coffee table later that night. For you, she said. You gave me an envelope? I said, trying to balance disbelief and gratitude as though they were heavy plates in my arms. She nodded. It is the Aurelian custom to exchange tokens that indicate trust. I selected something I believed you would appreciate. I opened it. Inside was a slender strip of fabric, soft, faded, and smelling faintly of ozone, and a trace of my apartment's cinnamon candle. "It's a scarf," I said. "It's nice." "No," she corrected gently. "It is my seed cloth." "You gave me a seed cloth?" "On my world, a seed cloth is a promise that the bearer will share a sheltered place for ideas to grow." My chest tightened. I felt words gather behind my teeth like birds at sunrise. "Lirina," I said, because that was all I needed to say, and because it felt like the sincerest thing I could put into the room. "Thank you." She smiled. That smile was a small, private landscape of joy. "Keep it near your heart," she said. "It will help with your dreams." So I did. We settled into a strange, sweet domesticity. We learned each other's oddities. I learned the precise cadence of the hum that told me she was nervous, the scent that meant she was tired, the way her fingers curled when she was thinking of something tender. She learned the language of my small rituals, how I needed a mug with a chip, because that particular imperfection was lived in, and the way I stashed emergency snacks in my desk. Drawer for dramatic afternoons. Myra made sure to test the boundaries. Her visits became a weekly ritual of joking interrogation. Once she arrived with a cake to celebrate, non-binding but we might be status. The cake had an icing that read, "Congrats, maybe?" Kiss-proof. Lirana found it unsettling and irresistible. She set the cake down politely, examined the frosting with an anthropologist's scrutiny, and then, on impulse, took a tiny ceremonial bite. "What does it taste like?" I asked. "Universal sweetness," she said. "And frosting." Then, after a beat, she tilted her head. "It tastes of laughter." That made me grin until my face felt tight. Days folded into one another with a gentle rhythm. Synchronized morning breaths, shared lunches, mirrors, theatrics, council paperwork, and the way Lirana would wake me on quiet nights to show me colors on her wrist that meant stars were good tonight. We were being watched by friends, by the council, by the curious spiral of the city, but it didn't feel suffocating. It felt like being acknowledged. A week after the completion, the council sent an embossed invitation. It read as though a star had written it. "To Ethan Ward and Citizen Lirina Satel, you are requested at the atrium for Phase 2, formal recognition and communal festivities." Phase 2. The words shimmered. The invitation included a list, garb suggestions, optional gifts, seating arrangements, and an odd addendum. Family participation encouraged. My stomach did a circus trick. "Family?" I echoed, eyeing Lirina. "You mean like your family? The Aurelian council thing?" She blinked. "Yes? Yours?" I asked, and my voice went small in a way I didn't expect. She folded her hands. "My kin are small and procedural. They will be present. They prefer that the human make a public statement." "A public statement," I repeated, which I translated into human terms as, "Give a speech about how I did not accidentally cause an interspecies diplomatic incident, and also publicly demonstrate that I am not a danger to wildlife." Mira clapped. Delighted. Speech. Costume. Cake. This is the best reality show ever. I stared at the invitation, like it might contain the answer to life. Or at least to what to wear. "We have to prepare," Lirana said. "There are formalities." "Formalities," I echoed, which in my mind opened an endless loop of checklists and etiquette guides. She leaned in, brushing her luminous lips to my cheek in a kiss that tasted faintly of metal and jasmine. "We will do this together," she said. And in that small, luminous press of lips, I tasted the future awkward, bureaucratic, suffused with glow and humor, and something far more profound. The steady, warm conviction that whatever the council, the customs, the forms. Or Myra's documentation. We had chosen this. We had chosen each other. A new contract was waiting. Phase 2 promised speeches and garb, and probably chanting, and definitely cake. And also the pressure of families and officials, and 1,000 little eyes. But as we stood in the hush of our living room, Lirana's fingers laced with mine, the city lights spilling across the floor like confetti, I realized I wasn't afraid. I was more curious than afraid. Excited. Headlong, deliciously. Absurdly hopeful. Mira's come pinned with a new message. Live, human and Aurelian couple or cultural anomaly. Followed by a cascade of emojis. I closed my eyes, laughed, and pulled Lirana closer. The glow along her wrist blinked like a mischievous star. We'll need a fitting, she said. And poetry. And cake, I added. And perhaps an escort, she said, teasingly. Already booked, I said. And meant more than one thing. The invitation lay in my palm like the next page of an adventure novel. We had survived the accidental, the bureaucratic, and the hum. Now formal recognition awaited, complete with family ceremony, and perhaps the beginning of a lifetime of small rituals that would bind us in ways warmer than legal stamps. The council had recognized us. The city had noticed. My friends had opinions. My wings, decorative or not, had been touched. Lirana had asked to touch them. I had let her. And somewhere far beyond the windows, stars waited patient and bright like promises. Cliffhanger? Absolutely. But as the glow of our living room wrapped around us, and Myra emailed cake options with dangerous enthusiasm, I felt a thrilling certainty. Whatever Phase 2 brought, it would be ours to navigate together.